I'm Jenny Kelso. Well, that's not actually my real name. My real name is Letitia McCord Kelso, but Mike Clark just calls me Jenny. I was the happiest girl in the world when Clark asked me to marry him. We got married in 1861, just at the beginning of the Civil War. I was really happy to marry into the Kelso family. They were such a highly respected family in this area, being as how they were among the first settlers here in Washington. The Kelsos came originally from Northern Ireland to New Hampshire in 1700, but you know how awful that stony ground is out in New Hampshire, so it didn't take them long to figure out that maybe they needed to move on and find better farm ground. One of the boys, Robert, decided he would like to become a member of the Lewis and Clark expedition, so he hurried way out to the western frontier out there in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but the explorers had already gone, and he was so disappointed, but he consoled himself by finding a little gal and getting married and starting a farm out there in Pennsylvania. When the War of 1812 broke out, Robert decided to volunteer his services as a Minuteman up on Lake Erie. And after the war, you know how the grass is always greener, he decided to pack up his family and move on to Ohio and stayed there a few years, and from then on traveled to Indiana, where he finally put down some solid roots, raised a whole bunch of boys. His boys had that same perseverance and strong will that their daddy did have. His first son, Daniel, decided he wanted to become a lawyer when he was just a little tad. But he only had 10.5 months schooling, and that in a log cabin schoolhouse. But he worked really hard, and he studied all on his own, and he finally got his dream. He became a lawyer, the first lawyer in southern Indiana. And he went on to become a member of the House and the Senate, and even a delegate to the Constitutional Convention in Indiana. And his other brother, the second son, Joseph, who was Clark's favorite uncle, I guess I shouldn't say that, traveled with 5 other pioneer families westward in ox carts to this part of the country. They got here in the 1830s, and Joseph and a Mr. Wagoner bought 3 lots from William Holland for $1.50 each, and that they put on credit. Now, those lots were in the heavily timbered part of town, so there were even trees growing out in the streets in front of the lots. And the deal was that if you were the first person to build a house, you could use that valuable timber. But how do you decide which man's going to be the first man to build a house? So they cast lots. And Uncle Joe won, so a Kelso was the first person to build a house on the original plot of Washington. Now, because he came west with so little ready cash, he had to rent his farm ground for the first 2 years. After that, he was able to buy 80 acres, and he started a farm out on the prairie. Now, the other settlers thought he was touched in the head, because everybody knows if it doesn't grow trees, it's not going to grow crops. But some people even said it was poisonous to live out there on the prairie. He proved them wrong. He grew grain and pigs and did real well. He hauled his crops 160 miles by wagon up to Chicago, where he sold his wheat for 28 cents a bushel and his corn for 10 to 12 cents a bushel and his pigs for $1.25 per hundredweight. And often his payment would be half in cash and half in goods. But he still prospered. He worked hard, and he turned that 80 acres of worthless prairie ground into 320-acre farm, built a beautiful residence, and was highly respected as the wealthiest man in Tazewell County. That was Uncle Joseph. Now, Clark's mom and dad, they farmed too. Of course, not to the same extent, but they did raise 11 great kids, Clark being the pick of the litter. Of course, I'm a little prejudiced. And Clark's uncle David lived in Washington area too, and boy was there a fuss when he died. Seems as though he bought some tainted whiskey over at Mr. Pearl's saloon on the west side of town, and it killed him. Well, the crowd was in such an uproar that they stormed over there, and they literally destroyed Mr. Pearl's establishment. Well, Mr. Pearl was furious at that wrecking party, so he had him arrested. And they got themselves a lawyer, young Abe Lincoln, to defend him. And there was a trial over in Pekin. And do you know he got those boys acquitted? Yeah, he did. Now back to Clark and I. Clark was 27 when we got married. I was 17. And he was doing carpenter work around here in Washington and helping his dad farm. We had 4 good years together. And then our little girls were born. We had twin girls, Lulu and Lele. Unfortunately, shortly thereafter, I died. But Clark's mom and dad, they raised those girls up until they were plumb grown up. And I'm happy to say that Clark remarried 2 years after I died. He married another Washington gal named Jenny Wall, and she bore him 9 more children. The first 2 died in infancy, but the rest of them lived. One of them even grew up to be a teacher over in Peoria. And in 1890, Clark got that wanderlust again, and he loaded up his family and traveled all the way out to California. Well, I guess there's just no killing that Kelso spirit, that adventurousness. Thank you.